Hi everybody, welcome to Conversations with Clients. In this episode, what I want to go over is how we are perceived by clients and potential clients. My name is Anand, and I've been in the financial advisor world for about 2 decades now. And I've recently left to start my own software company to help financial advisors. So I wanted to take the opportunity now that I am out of the advising side of the world and compliance side of the world to kind of have a conversation with different clients or potential clients and see what they think about our world. We know about money, we live that every single day. However, the clients that we serve or the potential clients that we want to serve have a different view, sometimes even fear of money or investments. Now, I understand, we're in the world of TikTok investing and all of that. However, there are lots of folks that have different types of 401ks and retirement plans and pension plans and may not have had a financial advisor. And I want to kind of unpack what they're thinking about money, what their thoughts are, and what they think about financial advisors, the value that they provide, and bring that on. So I am very happy to welcome Brad. Brad is a CPA who actually has a financial advisor, but he did start off his journey being more a DIY and then ended up, having hired and working with a financial advisor. In this episode, we're not going to be naming any financial advisors and or mentioning any other advisors by name. This is mainly to unpack what folks think of money, finance, investments, what their fears are, what their expectations are, how they even go find out about a financial advisor. Do they even know what a financial advisor is, right? That's not a situation here with Brad, obviously. So let's start off with Brad and let's hear what he has to say. Welcome, Brad. Thank you for joining us here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, so tell me about your journey. You mentioned you were a CPA and that you did do DIY, right? And then you ended up having a financial advisor. So share with me your DIY experience and then what led you to say you need to actually have a financial advisor.
Yeah, for the, coming out of college and starting to kind of build my career, didn't have a lot of assets really to kind of think about to manage. But, as I progressed in my career and my financial wherewithal, knew I needed to be investing. I was doing that kind of through your standard 401ks with the company. And that's kind of nice because they have a limited amount of options for you to select. So in that sense, you don't have the wide universe of selections where it's really overwhelming. But as I got a little bit older and I got more interested in personal finance, I really knew we needed to be doing more and read a lot of books. Podcasts weren't as prevalent back then, but those are clearly an area that has a lot of information out there now. And we started to try to do it, my wife and I. It's just kind of scary. You kind of go into it and you know enough to be dangerous, but then you also realize there's a lot of things you don't know. And we had never really had direct experiences with advisors in the past and wasn't really sure about that business model and what that entailed and the fees associated with it. So, we kind of just plugged along doing our own thing. And that worked for a little while, but I think the big thing for us is we were probably not as invested dollar-wise into the market and time-wise into kind of maintaining it and really kind of keeping an eye on it than we should have, because life gets busy, you get a lot of things going on. So I think it was about 3 years ago, we kind of finally got to the point of like, let's really try to find a good fit for us on the advisor side. And I got lucky and found the person that we use now. And it's exactly what we were looking for. I think for us, we had come to the conclusion of we knew what kind of service we wanted. So that really helped of when I was searching for an advisor, that we had an idea and kind of a scope of work that we were looking for that really narrowed it down and made it a good fit. But I think the biggest thing, and as I've talked to some of my friends and other people in similar situations, it's just overwhelming. Even if you're knowledgeable about the topic or you think you're knowledgeable about the topic, there's just so much going on in personal finance that I think a lot of people just get overwhelmed and scared and don't know where to start. And I think that's the biggest thing as far as finding advice and, people to help you there is finding a good fit. I kind of equate it to that's what you're supposed to do with your doctors and stuff like that, of find somebody who's a good fit and that you feel like is a good relationship back and forth to help manage something as important as your health. Well, you want the same thing as to have somebody help manage a really important thing, which is your personal finances. So that's kind of where we are now. And I'm pretty happy of the state that we're in. And again, I think it was a lot of kind of internal work on us, our part of figuring out what we needed to kind of get us to that point.
Got it. Now, there's different types of financial advisors, right? And I want to kind of unpack a little bit on how you were able to find the advisor that you have currently, right? Was it a referral from another one of your friends, or just via social media or content? How did you find this particular advisor?
I would have to say the genesis of it is probably podcasts and Twitter. Again, personal finances and investing is a really interesting topic. I find it to be an interesting topic. So I read a lot about it. I listen to podcasts about it, not necessarily about personal finance, but just investing in general. And there's just kind of personalities that pop up there that, I tended to like. And I started, following on Twitter or listening to their podcasts. And kind of one thing led to another. One of the advisors that I work with, it's a smaller shop, ended up being the guest on one of the podcasts. And I was like, oh man, I really like their philosophy. I like what they say their firm does and what the services there provide. And that matched up really well, as I was mentioning before, of where we had kind of gotten mentally of what I was looking for. So I just cold reached out to him and said, hey, I heard you on a podcast. I love your philosophy. Here's who I am. Here's where I'm at. I'm looking for somebody along the lines of what you're talking about. I'd love to get to know you if you've got space. And so we had an email conversation back and forth, and they didn't have the capacity for new clients because they're a smaller shop and they kind of want to keep it limited. I said, that's great. And I asked him hey, do you know anybody else that's similar to you? And he gave me some names, but he's like, yeah, he's like, I don't have any really exactly like us. I said, okay, that's great. But I made the contact. And then I think it was about 6 months later, he emailed me and said, hey, by the way, I'm bringing on a partner who I've worked with for 10 to 15 years, and they're going to have capacity. Would you like an introduction and to talk to her, see if that's a good fit? And that's how I got my advisor. Is he called me back, or he emailed me back after I had done a cold outreach after a podcast episode. So it's pretty amazing how you make connections nowadays.
Got it. Yep. It's amazing. So one of the things that when I was in the field, I made importance to communicate with our clients was, basically educating them on the different strategies or options and what have you. Some clients liked it, and others, were kind of like, let's just get on with it and whatever you need to do, for example, right? I want to kind of ask you, where do you fit in the spectrum of being educated about what some of those decisions you're going to be making and what the impact of that could be? Or would you just rather have an advisor that just says, okay, this is what we're doing and let's just get on with it? When I just kind of find out from you where you fit.
Yeah, on that kind of on that spectrum, I would say, since I am already very interested in the topic and I've done some thinking and preparation for a lot of these things, I would say my conversations with my advisor I already have an idea of where I want to go. And it's more of, am I missing something? What are the things that I'm not thinking about? Because I don't know everything. Are there knock-on effects of the way we're thinking here that I need to be aware of? And it's less of a hand-holding and education and more of a collaboration and a conversation of after that kind of those introductory, phases of us getting to know each other and really what we were looking to do and looking to kind of put in place. It was, that's the putting the plan together process. Once we have that, I would say the education part is less important for me, and it's more about strategy and reacting to things if something changes in the investing world that we need to be considering, right. Tax rates have changed or something like that we need to kind of keep on top of. But that's kind of where I would say I fall on that kind of spectrum of investor or client.
Now, one of the latest, not the latest, but it's been, we as advisors have been doing this for a long time, but now it's becoming more prominent and we're using verbiage that kind of fits that is, this behavioral coaching. And it's an important element because sometimes, like you mentioned, right, there are things that you don't know that could have a knock-on effects. And that's where an advisor can have their value kind of being captured. What are your thoughts on the behavioral coaching elements of the financial advisor world?
Yeah, no, I think that is honestly one of the biggest value propositions for an advisor. Even myself, who I like to think I'm pretty sophisticated, still need some behavioral things to make sure I'm in check. And putting together a portfolio and doing, rebalancing and tax loss harvesting and all of those things, I think are, I would say, pretty much table stakes for anybody who's in the advising world. If you're not doing that, then I don't know what you're doing. But the biggest part, and again, it really comes down to what that client needs of how much coaching, how much behavioral kind of bumpers you have to put up, kind of like if you go bowling, you put the little guards up so you don't throw gutter balls, how much you need of that. And if I were an advisor trying to read into what my clients need, some of them are going to need more of it, some of them don't. I've talked to some people who are just like, I want to be completely hands off. I don't want to know any details. Okay, so maybe their behavioral coaching more is about budgeting and spending and other things like that. Whereas my behavioral coaching and the things that we focus on are just more of long-term plans and strategy, and not necessarily about the day-to-day, because for the most part, I think we've got the day-to-day handled. But yeah, I think it's a huge value add, and where people in the advising space can really, really be helpful to their clients.
Got it. Thank you for that. I want to ask, in terms of service, right? How important to you is the client service versus, let's say, always letting you know of different strategies? So for example, what I mean by service is, an advisor having to meet with you 4 times a year, for example, let's say, versus twice a year, but you get, more relevant information in the twice a year. Where do you fit in the level of service that you expect? What are your thoughts on the client service element of the financial advisor world?
No, I think client service is important. And again, I think it's a range. For me, we do quarterly check-ins, but I'll be honest with you, our quarterly check-ins is like 10 minutes of us actually talking about like strategy and like real things about my portfolio. It's more of like, hey, we're within threshold of where we were, and I'm going to do this, this, and this. And then it's honestly, I like my advisor and we like talking to each other. So it's kind of like a quarterly, we get to chat and catch up with each other, see how everybody's families are doing. And it's more of a personal relationship there. I would say, the quarterly check-in is probably good. It doesn't have to be something complicated or long or crazy in depth. But what I like and what I would expect is, I'll just get an email from them and be like, hey, we're looking at this. We saw this come into your account. You're a little bit out of balance. We're going to do this. Is it okay if we make the trades and do this? Okay, great. That we don't have to wait for a quarterly call to go over like little things like that. If something pops up that makes sense to do, I would expect a quick email or a quick phone call to kind of go over that. I guess my needs are pretty basic, so we don't need to do any kind of crazy check-ins that would be more in depth, I think on like a semi-annual basis. But again, I think that just comes down to what I've asked them to do is relatively low-hanging fruit and doesn't need a super thorough analysis every couple of months or something like that.
Got it. And what do you think about financial advisors, and not necessarily just your advisors, but just as a consumer, right? How can we improve our access to consumers like you, for example? What are some of the things that you would think that, like you mentioned, the podcast was one of the reasons why you were able to actually connect with, and the philosophy of that particular advisor, right? But besides that, we sometimes do client events and dinners, and well, not anymore with COVID, right, world, but those are generally some of the things that we do. What are your thoughts on that element of, having a big client event and things of that sort, are those enticing you to say to your other friends to say, hey, talk with my advisor? Just give me a little bit of thoughts on that.
I think that's one of the things that had me guarded against advisors in the past. I don't particularly like a big event of like, hey, get to know us. It just seems, for me, it's a little too salesy. And I'm in sales, so I get it. I always didn't like that personally. The folks that I've connected with, my advisor and other people that I admire and follow I think they do informational sessions, but they definitely don't feel as salesy from what I can gather. And I think what's really interesting nowadays is the way that if you're an advisor to get out to folks, a lot of it being education or whatever, of getting out there of what your philosophy is, what exactly you do. And so there's less mystery from a potential customer of like, oh, what do these people do? It's not a black box. This is what you get. This is the type of services we provide, very clear. Obviously as clear as you can be, because it can be a little bit fuzzy. But I have personally found that to be a better kind of outreach and sales technique of if you as the service provider are very clear of like, this is what we do. This is our mindset, and this is the type of things that we want to accomplish with you as a potential client. It's more of a lead magnet to like-minded people and good fits versus trying to do a square peg in a round hole of like, I provide advisor services, but that's not maybe really what the person needs. Those are just kind of what I have found to be successful, but that's also just a personal viewpoint.
Got it. Last question here. Many advisors, especially the newer advisors, are sometimes, hesitant to ask for referrals. And that's one of the channels that advisors actually can grow their practice without having to spend a ton of money on different type of marketing, for example, and what have you. They still do, that's necessary, but referrals is also an important channel. If an advisor, not perhaps your advisor, but how do you feel about if somebody were to ask you, hey, if you like our service, are there friends, family members that we should be talking with? What are your thoughts when asked that?
I completely expect it and have no issue with it whatsoever. Again, I'm for what I do in my work, I have to ask for referrals too. So yes. I understand I'm in a customer service business, and our reputation and the service that I provide, it's hard to show that off in a marketing piece because it's really a personal touch. It's really, you don't know until you work with me, the type of stuff that I can do and the type of service that I can provide. So I am completely understanding when an advisor would say, hey, if you've got anybody that you think would be a good fit, would love to talk to them. I've got no issue with it. I think that's a great way to grow business. I know it kind of feels weird at times because I have to do it too, and it kind of feels icky. But I honestly think that's the best way to get referrals. And I think I keep coming back to fit of in a service business, especially as something as personal finance, being comfortable with the person you're working. And that goes on both sides. That's coming from the advisor to the client and then the client back to the advisor. You both want to be comfortable with each other. And the best way to start there is if you have a third party who's worked with one of them and says, hey, I know both of you, you might be a good fit. That's a great introduction. That's a great way to really, really start off on maybe finding another good fit. I would say in my own business, a big part of our drumming up of new clients is referral based in some kind or another. And those generally end up being the better longer term fits to grow into a bigger relationship. So I would spend a lot of time there, and I completely sympathize with you got to do some marketing, but I don't know how successful it is. The bang for the buck there, it's something you got to do, but it's pretty hard, and I get it.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many more marketing channels that opened up now, and if advisors are generating content and having that, I'm seeing a lot of success. But there's also this other referral channel that I know that I grew up on, right? It's kind of like the old, and that is one other peg, but advisors feel icky asking sometimes, right? And I've trained advisors to kind of ask for that, and so I know the feeling. Right. That's why I wanted to just kind of get your perspective from a consumer side, right, rather than just us. So Thank you, Brad, so much for your time. I appreciate it. And everybody, please subscribe and like. We're going to have more of these videos come on so everybody can kind of learn and have this bridge between the financial advisor world as well as to the, our clients or prospective clients. So thank you, Brad.
No, thank you.